Hello, so today we're going to go quickly through Unit 18.2. Shouldn't take long, it's not a big unit, but we're doing about the graph of y equals mx plus c. So I talked about it a bit in the last video, and we should know what's in it, but let's have a look at the equation. So we have two variables, we have y and we have x. So these are what are going to change when we have the line, they're changing over time. And then we have two constants, m here and c there. So what's m? Well, like I said, we talked about it last time, the gradient. That's what we were working out. And the gradient is always next to the x. It's always mx. When it's next to the x, we call it the coefficient. If you remember that, coefficient. How do you spell it? Yep, there you go. Coefficient of x. And then we have this c, which we haven't really talked about, but this is the intercept. It doesn't really talk about it much in the book, but I'm going to want you to work out the intercept as well, because it's good practice for future, and it's not too hard. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, we might be given an equation. Let's just make a random one up. So we might have y equals 4x take away 3. So we should be able to identify where the gradient is. Well, it's the coefficient, remember? It's the bit next to the x. So it's just 4. So the gradient of this line, you can write m equals 4. And the intercept, well, it's the bit that's sort of over here on its own. So it's this bit. And you notice here this is a plus c. Well, if we had a plus minus 3, it just becomes minus 3. So the intercept is just minus 3. And you can write c equals minus 3. Okay, and that's all it is. We've found it for that equation. So it's pretty straightforward. Let's try another one, just quickly. Let's do y equals minus 2x plus 4. Well, again, you should be able to get this straight away. Gradient is the bit next to the x, so it's the minus 2. And the intercept is a bit on its own, just 4. So it's plus 4 here. Okay, so what does this mean in terms of graphs? So we have 3 lines here, and I'm going to tell you the gradients of these are all the same. And you should be able to tell this because all the lines are parallel. If we have parallel lines, then it means the gradients of them all are the same. Right, so what are the equations of this line? We have, I'll tell you the gradient's half x. So we're going to have, it's a half. So we have y equals half x. And then it's the intercept is where it crosses through with the axis, the y-axis. So here it's just plus 2 because it's going through it too. The next one, it's half x still because the gradients are the same. Where's it crossing through? At 0. So, well, I don't need to. You can write it plus 0 if you want to, or you can just leave it blank. Y equals a half x. And the last one, well, again, it's going to be half the gradient, so a half x. And where does it pass through? Well, this looks like minus 3.5. So the intercept is minus 3.5. And that's it. That's all that changes. I'll show you another set of graphs. This time you can tell, hopefully, that the gradients are all different. So what's staying the same here? Well, they're all crossing through the same point. What point's this? Well, it's 1, 2, 3. So this point's 2. So I'll tell you the gradient of this line, because we know how to work them out. You should be able to work this out if it was a proper graph. I'll just tell you the gradient's 1. So it's going to be 1x plus 2, because it's crossing through this point 2. This green one, the gradient, well, it's flat. So it's not going up or down when you move. So the gradient's just 0. So y equals 0x. Where's it crossing through? 2. That's why we get y equals 2 for this line, because this 0x goes away. So when you've seen these horizontal lines, that's why we don't have an x in them. And then the last one, so we should be able to tell as we go from left to right, as x gets bigger, we can see the lines going downwards. So it's going to have a negative gradient. So we know it's going to be y equals minus, and it's about half x when I drew this. We could work that out again, like we did yesterday. And what's the intercept? Again, 2. So they all have the same intercept because they're all crossing through the same point. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's look at another equation, slightly different. Not very different though, but we need to find the gradient. So is this the gradient or is this the gradient? Now this one's a little bit trickier because it's not in the form y equals mx plus c. It's actually y equals c, take away plus mx. Okay, because it's just being shifted around a bit. So all you've got to remember is that the gradient is always next to the x. It's always the coefficient of x. So what's next to the x? It's the minus 3. So then what's the intercept? It's the other bit. And this is positive, so c equals 5. So just be careful if it's swapped around. Just remember the gradient is always next to the x. That's like the big thing here. It's always the coefficient of x. Okay, so hopefully you can do the questions now. I'll just have a quick look through them, see if there's anything else that we might come across. Okay, so drawing lines. You should be able to draw the lines. Remember, so the first question I'll help you out with, it says y equals 1.5x. So you should draw your axes and then just plot the points. So when y is 0, then 1.5 times what is 0? So x is 0. And then, well, it's easy to go the other way actually. So if you start off with your x's, maybe you can make a table. That's usually the easiest way to do it. So x and y. If x is 0, 1, 2, 3, then you get y is 0, y is 1.5, 3, 4.5, just by putting them in here. So 1.5 times 1 gives us this, 1.5 times 2, and so on. Hopefully that makes sense. So then you're going to plot them, and sometimes you'll have a bit added on here, add 2.5, you just put it in here. It should be okay. Then finding the gradients. Whenever it says to find the gradient, I want you to find the intercept as well. It should be pretty simple, and it's good practice, like I said. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the questions on a Google sheet for you to hand in today, just to see how it works. It might be quite quick to mark, quite easy, so that's what I want you to do. We're going to do all the questions, even the brains, because there's only 6 questions. And graphs come up so much in the future that it's really good to get a good grasp on them now. But it's going to be on the Google Sheets. Okay, so some of them, because the drawing you won't be able to do them, but just the answer ones are going to be on the sheets. Okay, let me just check. Oh, so there's one last thing. It says, we've done this in the starters of the lessons, but it says find which line passes through these coordinates. So maybe you have like y equals 2x plus 3, y equals 3x plus 4, and y equals, I don't know, it's 2x plus 5. And then it says which one passes through, let's do 3 and 11. And so you have to just test these ones out. This is your x, remember, and this is your y. So we put them in. So we get 2 times 3 plus 3, which equals 2 times 3 is 6 plus 3 is 9. So does that work? No, it's not that one. Here 3 times 3 is 9, add 4 is 13. So does that work? We have 3 and 13, so no. Here 2 times 3 is 6. Add 5. Oh, it's 11. So we have our 3 and we have our 11. And so it's the tick. It's this one. So you're just putting the numbers in. We've done that in the starter. I see that's quite rushed, but like I said, we've done it before, so it should be okay. We've got the Zoom lesson later on, so make sure to have your questions ready for that. And if you're not ready for that, you can always message me. And yeah, it's not a big chapter, so good luck.